Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1152B and today's date is December 14th, 2016 and the title of the episode is Obama's Last Attempt to Push the UN Arms Trade Treaty. Be prepared for an event. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we've been talking a lot about the CIA, how they're trying to manipulate the electors, and how the elite right now are pushing their agenda. We know they don't want Trump entering the White House. The elite, they want to stay in power. They want control. And it looks like Jeremy Scahill, who's the Dirty Wars author and investigative journalist for The Intercept, well, he took the next step. He's calling the CIA's bluff. And in the article, Obama must declassify evidence of Russian hacking, Scahill and John Schwartz called out U.S. intelligence agencies for their record of deceit, asserting that the American people are not going to simply take their word for it. Now, we know that U.S. intelligence agencies have repeatedly demonstrated that they regularly lie and get things really wrong. And when it comes to the CIA case against Russia, that it interfered with the presidential election, well, we can't go by hearsay. We need facts. We need evidence. And they haven't provided this. So in order to give Barack Obama's administration that extra push, guess what they did? They said, listen, we encourage whistleblowers to use the publication secure drop link. Patriotic whistleblowers within the U.S. intelligence community may drop the leak that proves Russia is behind President-elect Donald Trump's win. We will verify its legitimacy and then publish it. Because right now, all we're hearing is propaganda. We're not hearing facts. We're not seeing evidence. We're seeing nothing like that whatsoever. And we know the WikiLeaks information is a complete lie because Julian Assange, Craig Murray, this wasn't a hack. It was a leak from the inside. So we can see right now the CIA is in trouble. Let's see what they do. Now, one of the electors, and we reported on this before, Christopher Supran, he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about his decision where he claimed ideological superiority over Trump, which would prevent him from voting for the president-elect on December 19th, as he is required. And Got News did a little research and investigation into Supran's background. And while they're doing this, they realized that he signed up for Ashley Madison. That was a website where you can go cheat on your spouse. And they found bankruptcy records. And they found a whole bunch of P.O. boxes and some type of payday loan scam site. And we see right now that he uses many different email addresses. But the thing is, the credit card data is his, no matter which email address and what other information he has. He also set up Never Forget 9/11 Charity with a P.O. box, but we don't know if this is a real charity. He also declared bankruptcy, and his bankruptcy just so happened to clear up this year. Very interesting. But we also see that he has these 6 different P.O. boxes in 6 cities in Texas and Virginia. The question is, why does he need so many? What are they used for? Now, a Harvard professor, he is out there saying he's rallied nearly enough GOP electors to block Trump right now. Now, if 37 Republican electors can be persuaded to cast their votes for someone other than Trump, that would throw the election into the House of Representatives, and it is unclear what the House would do in that scenario. And we can see that 40 Democrats, they've signed the petition, and as as of this morning, the list has grown to 55. So we can see right now there is a huge move to stop Trump from entering the White House, from being sworn in on January 20th. This is phase 2 that we're in. And they're going to try to block Trump at all costs right now. And it looks like they don't need to provide evidence. These individuals want an intelligence briefing. They want to understand what's going on. And of course, as you know, they're going to make the case that Trump cannot be president because he has dealings with Russia. And of course, they might even throw out an IP address, which will be a Russian IP address, but they'll never make the link. It's almost like if you had a court case that had to do with murder, and the person's up on the stand on trial for murder. They present the dead body, pictures of the dead body, and pictures of the weapon. And they say, okay, there's the person, there's the weapon, there's the pictures of the dead body. That person must have done it. But there's no link. You need to make the link. You need to show ownership of the gun. You need to show where the person was, how the person did it. And this is the problem we have with this whole Russian hacking thing. They're going to need to show evidence. They just can't say it. They have to show a link to the Russian government and how they did it, who was involved. And again, coming up with this so quickly and tracking it down, because remember, these are state actors. They don't leave footprints. They don't let you understand where the attack is coming from. And we can see right now that the overseers of the intelligence community, they are saying that the CIA really has no evidence right now. Actually, during the election, they were saying there was no attempt to hack the election. You know why they were saying it back then? Because Hillary was winning in the popular vote. They were only going to use that if she was losing. So maybe the Russian hacking helped Hillary win the popular vote. I mean, we can switch this around and say that. But all of this is propaganda. Now, Obama, he is pushing the UN Arms Trade Treaty, and he's pushing it back into the Senate. Now, this is very odd at this point in time, because Obama, he has about, 1 month left? And this tells us that something else is about to happen, because we know that these individuals, they want to take the weapons away from the people. That's completely obvious at this point. And what they're saying is the UN Arms Trade Treaty would override the Second Amendment. He's already put into place all the executive orders to support the UN Arms Trade Treaty. And in past reports, we went over this in great detail. And we know they want to have a database, they want to have a tracking system. And basically, it is to remove the weapons from the people. Now, by putting this into the Senate doesn't mean it's automatically going to pass, because Senator Bob Corker, he released a statement on Obama's new attempt at ratification. And remember, this was signed back in 2013 by John Kerry. He said since 2012, many senators, including myself, expressed opposition to the Small Arms Trade Treaty, citing an array of concerns with the Second Amendment rights. Nothing has changed over the last 4 years to suggest the treaty is in our national interest, and it will remain dead in the water. I reiterate my strong opposition and will work with my colleagues to protect the rights of Americans. So how do you get something in the Senate, in the House? How do you get it moving along? Well, you know, if you don't do anything, it just sits there. So he's going to have to create, through his agencies, a false flag. Which means, if they're going to do it in a school, it would have to be before Christmas vacation or right after Christmas vacation, because we have Christmas vacation between Christmas and New Year's. He might do this in a mall setting where there's a crowd of people. But whatever he's going to do, it has to be very large to give this UN arms trade treaty traction in the Senate. This is what he's been doing all along. He's been pushing the agenda with all these false flags of mass shootings. So we should be aware that some type of an event will occur during this time period. Because when January 20th hits, if Trump makes it that far, he's no longer the president. So he does have a plan. Because why would he do this late in the game? Now, at this point, we can see there's a war going on with fake news. Now, again, the corporate media, the U.S. government, it is their war against the truth. Because they want their narrative of the story to be what everyone is looking at. And Mark Thompson, president and CEO of the New York Times, he delivered remarks to the member of Detroit Economic Club. And he threw around the idea of government censorship of fake news. And of course, he ran into a problem because it's called the First Amendment. And the First Amendment doesn't say, oh, you can only have freedom of the press, freedom of speech if you're telling the truth. It only says freedom of the press and freedom of speech. Let the people decide if they want to listen or not listen, tune in or not tune in. It's not up to the government to decide. And he does admit that this is completely unrealistic because of the First Amendment. Then he suggests the Ministry of Truth, run by corporations, but admits this was kind of worrisome, that things, will be in favor of the corporations and really not for the people. And then he spoke about a solution that has to do with labeling. And he compares all of this to food labeling, where he could say, we'll have an administrative body in the government, we'll have to create a whole new department, and they will label the news just like they label food. So you know what you're looking at. Now, of course, just because something is labeled doesn't mean it's true. If you look at tuna and it's labeled, and you can see the label there, doesn't mean that whatever's in that can is tuna, because they count many different types of fish as tuna. So labels are deceiving when it has to do with the government. And we can see what they're trying to do. The labels would be the corporate media, check. Real news, check. They have the facts, check. They have the backing of the government. Everyone else would get a different label. So we can see what they're trying to do here at this point. What they really want to do in the end of all of this is get rid of the alternative media. They want control of the internet. This is why the internet was passed to the UN. This is why they brought up fake news, because now it is a huge push to censor, censor, censor. Now, out in Syria, we see things are breaking down for the United States government central bankers, terrorists. We see right now that Aleppo has now been liberated. Syria is in control. The terrorists are no longer in control. And we see, coming from a UN commission, that the al-Nusra, al-Sham rebels, the moderate rebels, well, they've been killing the civilians in this area. It is not the Syrian armed forces. This is the propaganda that the United States government central bankers are using to convince everyone that as Assad is moving in, he's just killing people willy-nilly. And what we know from the past is that these terrorists have been beheading, have been terrorizing the people, and they've been using chemical weapons on the people, and they've been using them as human shields. And they're called terrorists. They're not called helpful individuals, they're called terrorists. And this is what they've been doing. But of course, as Aleppo is being liberated, the U.S. needs to come up with some type of propaganda story to convince everyone that we still need to go after Assad, because that is their main mission from the beginning. Now, there is an independent journalist out there, Vanessa Beeley. She's on the ground in Aleppo documenting everything that's going on, including the large-scale humanitarian operation aimed at helping the tens of thousands of refugees that escaped the terrorist rule in East Aleppo. But her photographic and all her encounters in Aleppo, in Syria, well, they're completely ignored by the mainstream media in favor of a shadowy figure, Bilal Abdul Karim, where he's in line with the moderate rebels. So she's showing exactly what is going on, where the terrorist groups, the moderate rebel, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, they've been terrorizing the people in Syria, but the mainstream media is not looking at this whatsoever. Now, we see right now that there is no confirmation from any independent humanitarian organization that Syria or Russian troops have been committing atrocities in Aleppo. Actually, they've been helping the people. They've been bringing humanitarian aid. And from the footage of what has happened there, and there's drone footage, and you can see it on the x22report.com site, or you can see it on YouTube, that this whole area is a complete mess from the war that's been going on for such a long time. And Assad was out there saying that all humanitarian aid that was being brought in never went to the civilians whatsoever. It always went to the terrorists. The United States supplied the terrorists with aid, weapon, and support. And we can see right now that things are in flux. We understand that the terrorist groups, they've taken over Palmyra, and it seems that they're going to be using this to stage another offensive. And we have to understand something. These terrorist groups, the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Al-Sham, well, they've been receiving weapons from the Obama administration. He has been supporting Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, providing the terrorists in Raqqa, northern Syria, as well as Aleppo with large quantities of weapons. And we can see that the U.S. military has been channeled to Al-Qaeda as well as the Islamic State. The U.S. has used the illegal weapons market to channel vast amounts of weapons and military hardware to the Syrian rebels. According to Jane's Defense Weekly, quoting documents released by the U.S. government's Federal Business Opportunities, the U.S., as part of its counterterrorism campaign, has provided the Syrian rebels, Al-Qaeda, with large amounts of weapons and ammunition. The U.S. and its allies, including Turkey, Saudi Arabia, well, they have relied on illicit trade in light weaponry produced in Eastern Europe, the Balkans, China, for delivery to rebel groups inside Syria, including the Islamic State and al-Nusra. Operating out of the occupied Golan Heights, Israel's IDF has provided weapons, ammunition, logistical support to al-Qaeda rebels operating in southern Syria. These shipments of weapons are not conducted through internationally approved weapon transfers. While they are the result of a Pentagon procurement, they are not recorded as official military aid. They use private traders and shipping companies with the realm of thriving illicit trade in light weapons. And they have many different routes where they supply the weapons. The bulk of the weapons and ammunition supplied to the Syrian rebels, well, they are channeled by Turkey and Saudi Arabia. The U.S. is also involved in the routine delivery of the light weapons to the rebels, including anti-tank and rocket launchers. And this has been going on for quite a while, I should say. They have supplied something like 944 tons of weapons. And very interestingly right now, that a U.S. Army General, Stephen Townsend, said that the Islamic State, well, they may have seized anti-aircraft weapons in the city of Palmyra. Very interesting. Because they're saying that we believe, well, they said they believe there were some weapons left over and they could be MANPADs. And now we're hearing that there's multiple reports out of the Middle East that point to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, who've transferred man-portable air defense system, MANPADs, to the Islamic State in this area. And they have been given instructions to shoot down Russian Su-34 fighters. Why would they do this at this point? Because they want a war with Russia. It's payback time. Remember, the U.S. government, the central bankers, they are backed up against the wall. Now is the time where they're going to use any tactic, any method to regain control in Syria. They're not just going to leave because the terrorists are beaten in Aleppo. They're not going to pack up the bases that they created in Syria. What they're doing is they're planning their next wave. And that is shooting down Syrian jets, Russian jets, and taking this to the next level. What is the next level? Well, in Syria, it could be a tactical nuke. We know they snuck one into Syria. It could be biological. But we can see right now, whatever they're going to do, it's going to be huge. Because we can see already they're keeping Trump from entering the White House. They're preparing for the collapse. And they're losing the Middle East. This is all happening at once. Because you have to remember, they don't want to give up their power, their control. They've had a plan for a very long time. And they want to see it through. Because after the war, after the collapse, they want to restart the system. They want full control of what's going on here. And they're not just going to let this go. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.